Welcome to the Gold Standard here on the 440 Sports Network. I am Braden Gall, and you can follow me on the internet at Braden Gall.
And I'm Emma Lingan. You can follow me on the internet at Emma_Lingan. And the nose in the side of the frame is my dog Minka.
Early appearance by Minka. Good to see her. Good to see you. Good to see everybody else. If you're in the comments, please, we'd love to take questions because there's so much more to talk about with this Nashville Predators team than usual. Brought to you by Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. So there we go. Kevin, good to see you in the comments as usual, early and often. Love having you, man, and appreciate your support. Go sign up for Lower Broad Hockey. Just because the offseason is coming and the Preds aren't making the playoffs doesn't mean that we're not going to have good coverage for you over the course of the offseason. I know Michael's working on some stuff for the draft and for the prospect guide and updating that kind of stuff, so make sure you check all that out. You can get Emma's weekly newsletter on Fridays, which is basically my entire consumption of like NHL news. Like basically, Emma, you have complete control over my perspective of the NHL. So I'm trusting you with that.
That's a lot of power.
or zero power. I'm not sure. Lots of stuff to talk about. The Preds are on a 3-game losing streak. Andrew Brunette says the team is emotionally unattached. They're not emotionally attached. We'll discuss that. Obviously, we had two very interesting hits that I thought in the game. Like if either one of the two didn't happen, it maybe wouldn't be an interesting story to me. But the fact that they both happened in the same game on opposite teams and were called differently, I think is interesting. So we'll get into that. A lot of new faces on this roster, getting some playing time over the course of the last few games since Emma and I talked with you guys. So we'll discuss that. I think there is after watching the hits and watching the 3 losses where they scored 2 goals, I think there is one thing that matters from here on out. One thing only, and we'll get to that. That's a tease. And I do think I kind of stumbled on this in the Gold Standard Extra with Adam this week on Lower Broad Hockey. The one thing that is most concerning to me about Barry Trotz's decision making around Andrew Brunette's future. So we'll get to that because he kind of walked back some of his comments that maybe we misunderstood, Emma, in the media, as we want to do. Again, Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. The all-inclusive vacation was great for the kids. The food and the booze, I would have loved to seen Emma do a live stream like reaction to the packs of young people at this resort.
Why me?
Because I just think you'd be snarky and entertaining. I just think it'd be funny to watch you do it.
That's just my live reaction to existing, honestly. Just but entertainment.
There was only like 2 types of people at this resort. There was people like me and my wife with our kids, taking them for some place that's basically America. In Mexico, unfortunately. The excursions were amazing. I talked with Adam about this. Like the excursions were great. We got out of the resort and went and like saw Mexico, went and like swam in the cenotes and con los tortugas, all this good stuff. And we hiked in the Mayan ruins. It was great. I like that stuff. Sitting at the resort felt like it was a cruise ship, which is not my favorite. And why am I bringing this up during the commercial break? Because the food and the booze are the worst parts of an all-inclusive by far. And I know you like good food. You like a good cocktail. And my wife and I are the same when we go on vacation. Those are the things we like to do. And I couldn't wait to get back to high quality beverages from Sinkers. Good quality local craft beer from Nashville, as sold by Sinkers in the award-winning beer fridge. And Shotgun Willie's Barbecue open today, Wednesday, at 11 a.m. till 3 p.m. Wednesday through Sunday. The food and the booze is the problem, Emma, with cruise ships and with all-inclusives. The other problem is the packs of 22-year-olds that look like small children to me now at my age. And how
they look like small children to me at my age now.
One girl, and this is the thing, like my wife and I continually quote this one girl back to each other. Like, you know how you go on a vacation, you see something like this one girl at the pool. She's probably, I don't know, like I'm sure she's like 25, but she looked like she was like 11. That's just how my I can't tell the difference anymore. And so she's hammered and she is burnt red and she's trying to climb a palm tree at the pool deck. And this is this is like Monday or Tuesday. And my 8-year-old's head is on a swivel the entire time. Like she's just like packed Packs of people are walking back and forth. Josh says, any idea if Stockholm has much barbecue scene? I did look up flights live on the show when that story broke with Adam. But here's the thing. She came back like 2 days later, and like the swim up bar was a big hit for the girls. Like they wanted to swim up and get like their slushies or whatever, which is a big deal for them. And at one point, this same girl, like 2 days later, is sitting there talking to her friend, and me and my wife are just sitting there kind of like chill. And we overhear the conversation, and she's like, dude, you got to get on my level the last couple days. And we were like, uh-huh. She's the one who's trying to climb a tree, got nowhere on the tree. Like,
yeah,
nowhere.
I don't know that anyone needs to be on her level, but you know what?
Agreed.
Good for her.
Agreed. I just would have loved to have seen you like look at a pack of like 24-year-old dudes or 25-year-old girls that are just all in their element in Cancun and spring break.
See, you don't even need to do that don't even need to go to Cancun for that. Just go with me to a Broadway bar. I'll do the same thing.
I mean, Broadway bars, the problem with Broadway bars is that what's worse? Like a 55-year-old pack of the same exact dude that was doing the thing 30 years ago when they're 25? That's wearing like the Affliction t-shirts and like the bedazzled jeans and stuff. What's worse, that or the 25-year-olds who just don't know any better and they're just there to have fun? I honestly can't tell which one's worse. I think the Broadway one is worse.
I don't know.
They're
younger kids are worse to me because the older people, I'm like, whatever, you are who you are at this point. The young kids, I'm like, just stop. You're embarrassing yourself.
Subscriber event, going to a Broadway bar with Emma. Would you do it for charity? Would you do it for charity?
For charity?
Yeah. Kevin,
are people paying money to go with me to a Broadway bar?
I think Kevin, this is a great idea. I think it's a private podcast, private live podcast, aka conversation.
See, I'm going to become the charity if you take me to a Broadway bar because it's like $11 for a beer at one of those places.
You absolutely get that. But Kevin says, this is what I'm saying. If you want the luxury of hearing Emma's commentary live in 4K at a Broadway bar, yes, of course you drink for free and you eat for free if you want any food down there. Shotgun Willie's barbecue way better. Sinker's Beverages way better. But I think we do have to sell tickets to this event. Like I'll rent out one of the transportainments. So we'll all be safe and everybody pays for that. 440 will pay for the bus. You guys all pay for your tickets. All that money will go help Our Kids, which is a charity that I've worked for like 15 years. That helps sexually abused children in Middle Tennessee. I'm just saying this is how good ideas get started.
Here's a fun fact for you.
We'll talk about the Preds eventually.
Here's a fun fact. During my brief period of unemployment last year, one of my friends here in Nashville works for a marketing agency, and one of their clients at the time was the Nashville Tractor party bus, with the big thing on the front that says like "I got plowed," like really classy shit. And they were doing a commercial shoot, like a video and photo shoot, and needed extras to be part of this. And so if you see any ads on social media for the Nashville Tractor, you will see me in them. I don't know. A lot of them were like targeted ads. So like they pop up. Maybe now that I've said it out loud, your phone is listening to me.
I'm going to it now. Is it Rowdy Bus Tours or is it the Nashville Tractor? The Nashville Tractor. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing marketing photos of what appears to be lots of young women at the bar or on the bus. All right, we're gonna spend some time on this. Gold Standard audience, if you would like to dig these videos up and see if you can screenshot Emma as an extra Lower Broad hockey hot tub,
I'll send them to you. I'll send them in the chat. Lower Broad subscriber exclusive.
Now, look, here's the deal on this. When I lived downtown, I hated the Woo girls. Sean Henry. This is how I bring it back to the Preds. Watch this. Sean Henry. One of his worst ideas, and I think he'll tell you this. It was putting the pedal taverns on the ice during intermission. Like that idea got booed so hard, so fast. I think it lasted like 2 games and they stopped doing it because it got booed so hard, so fast. So we all hated those things. They all are eyesore. Maybe I guess it was before you got to the organization.
It was before my time.
This was like 2 games. I assume, like, I don't remember when it was, but they did intermissions where they had the pedal tavern go out on the ice like a Zamboni and do like laps. And I think I was there the first game that they did it, and it was the crowd murdered it. Like they murdered it. It was the booze were like, it was not like fun booze.
Yeah,
It was not
no.
like, oh, we're having.
Yeah, you get stuck behind one of those things, I would boo it too.
Kevin says, dude, that was a killer idea. But here's the thing. So I built all this up to say I hated all those things, the transportainment, whatever you want to call it. I work on another show with a lawyer who represents one of those, and he, like, one of the things I've learned is that parents of especially young women do not want to send their kids to Broadway for reasons, and especially when they're like 18 to 25 years old. The party buses are safe. The party bus is a contained environment. Now we're really off topic. The party bus is a super contained environment, and while it is an eyesore and looks ugly, it is very safe for, in particular, a group of young girls that's going to be down there not knowing what the hell's going on at 1 a.m. at one of these bars. So I just want to point that out, that there's a lot of folks in Nashville that will not let their kids go downtown unless they're on one of those party buses. So just pointing that out.
It is safe. It's a controlled environment with people presumably, and it's like safety tip for the women out there. Like, it is kind of ridiculous how I have a group of 4 friends, girlfriends here in Nashville, and we were talking just recently about this. 3 out of 4 of us have been roofied before. And I'm sure if you went to other friend groups, like, that would be, and I would not consider myself a high risk target, like an easy target. I don't go out a lot. I don't party, and it's happened to me. So I'm just saying, like, I think if you go to other friend groups, you would probably get similar numbers. And people don't realize how often it happens. So just be careful.
Yeah. Anyway, there's a bunch of different PSAs. And so here's what we're going to do. Drink on Broadway for charity for kids. That's what we're going to do. Great idea, Kevin. Okay, let's talk Predators here. So if you didn't see it, of course, there was the Michael McCarron hit on Pavel Buchnevich for St. Louis, kind of behind the net. He dips his head at the last second. McCarron doesn't look dirty, doesn't look like it's intentional at all. It's a 5-minute major. He is ejected from the game. Then in the third period, I believe, right? Tyler Tucker around the benches going to hit Evangelista. Evangelista dips his head. It's kind of a similar situation where you're a couple of feet from the boards. You're kind of turning your body, and he turns into the hit, and he takes an elbow right to the head. Same kind of situation. He gets a 2-minute minor and is not ejected. First of all, what was the difference between the 2 hits in your opinion?
Quite honestly, and this is not me being a homer, I really just think that the difference was the reaction, not the reaction, but like sort of the aftermath. Like, Buchnevich was down for a long time. Evangelista was down for a little bit. But Buchnevich, I think it was the fact that, like, the significant size advantage first of all, for McCarron, the fact that he did hit his head. But again, I thought the hit was totally fine. Buchnevich has been in the league since 2016. He should know there's no excuse to put your head down. You keep your head up in those situations. Behind the net, come on. You got 6'6" Michael McCarron coming at you. You keep your damn head up. And so, again, I'm not saying anyone deserves to get hit in the head or to get injured. And, fortunately, he was okay. He came back in the third period. But I just thought he was down for a really long time. He was escorted. He walked or skated off on his own power, but like, he had members of the training staff with him. I just felt like that probably had a little bit more juice as far as, why they made the call.
And I guess, so ultimately, the hits themselves, I don't know how much there is difference-wise. That's ultimately what I'm trying to get at here, which is the plays themselves don't look all that different. Now, look, Evangelista is listed at like 6 foot, 185. And Tucker's listed at like 6'1", 205. Everyone's always a little tiny bit inflated. But again, the point is there's a size difference in both hits. a greater size difference with McCarron. But other than that, the hits themselves are hard to find an actual difference. It's a guy with a shoulder making a turn around the boards, trying to play the puck and getting in a bad angle against a bigger guy who kind of just catches him in the wrong place. Was Evangelista a little bit more face and a little bit more side of the head for Buchnevich? Maybe. But ultimately, I think the hits were basically the same. My issue with this is not whether or not McCarron's hit was a good hit or a clean hit or a bad hit or a dirty hit or a major hit or a suspension worthy hit or even Tucker's hit. It's that neither situations were handled the same way, called the same way, and treated the same way. And I think one of the things that I know we deal with this in football where we're trying to figure out what exactly is targeting. How do you legislate intent? I get all of that. I think the issue is consistency here. And I think that's the problem with this. If you're going to call the McCarron hit a 5-minute major, it certainly doesn't look like a penalty or a suspension to me at all. If you want to call it both of them looked clearly inadvertent, in my opinion. Like, I don't think either guy was intentionally going for the head. So that's the first part of this. It's important, I think. If you want to call it a 5-minute major and eject McCarron, fine. But then you got to do the same thing for Tucker. If you want to call it a double minor, I don't know where you're allowed to sort of legislate this stuff, but I just think they should have been called the same. And that's my issue, is that they weren't called the same. That's all.
Well, and even on the Evangelista, or no, not the Evangelista, the Buchnevich hit, I think it was Jake Neighbors was the one who kind of retaliated, which I don't know if that's a decision I would make for 6 foot, air quote, Jake Neighbors against Michael McCarron. But hey, McCarron essentially Gronk spiked him into the ice with one arm. But then Neighbors got it was like a 2-minute for roughing and then another 2-minute for like something else. I don't know. It was a weird, I'm like, why not just, I don't know. Why do we have to call these all differently?
Yep. I think that's the concern there. So I just wanted to bring that up because I wanted to get your opinion on what was different between the two hits, because they were called differently. They didn't review the second one on Evangelista, and so I guess that's what I'm asking is not like, did they get it right or wrong? It's why were they treated differently?
Well, because you have to. I mean, obviously, it has to be called a major for it to get reviewed. But there's always what bothers me in general, not just about those hits, but just in general, I feel like we've seen this a lot this season. If you call it a major, there's always the opportunity to downgrade it to a minor after you review it. So I don't know if there's ever any sort of, question or pause or hesitation about like, I don't know. Is it always just call it a major and then you can downgrade it? Is it like with the officials?
It's the fumble in football.
Yeah, I mean, is it something with the officials? Like it knocks their batting average or something if they have a call downgraded? I don't know, but
I think we just put 3 sports into 2 sentences.
Love that. I've been writing about baseball all morning, if you couldn't tell.
Will the Mets realize their potential on offense? No. So I mean, yeah, I think that's the issue. Again, in football, we say on a fumble, let the play out just in case it happens to be a fumble, right? That's what we do. And I think it took a while. It did take a while for the officials to start to lean that direction in the NFL, but they have. So again, that's my issue here. So we can move on. I know we've already wasted time on like transportainment today on the show, but I wanted to get that out there. We'll talk about some of the new pieces, and in light of a third loss where they've scored 2 goals in 3 games. They've been outscored 7-2. They got their 10th shutout of the season against the Kings, despite playing fairly good defense. Didn't give up a ton of shots against St. Louis, but you could just St. Louis speed was just on display, and they got beat a bunch of different times. Not really a close competitive game, although I guess you score on one of those power plays and maybe it's a closer game. I'm watching all of that. The record, by the way, is 12 shutouts in a season. It's already one of the worst seasons in franchise history. It's going to keep getting worse, and we're going to keep hearing numbers like this, like one of the worst road records in franchise history. I think they're at 34 losses now, which is they're one more, and they go all the way back to 02-03, which is the last year before they ever made the playoffs as an expansion franchise. And it leads me to sort of the one thing, as I'm watching Evangelista get hit, I'm watching Svechkov make, again, occasionally just do things you're going, man, okay, there it is. right? You also see a lot of stuff that makes him clearly a first-year player. Zach LaRue's had moments of really impressive stuff and moments of, rookie hockey. I'm watching Evangelista get hit, and I'm watching this team lose again, and I'm just going, there's only one thing that matters to me the rest of the way, and that is time on ice for young players. That's it. It's the only thing that matters. I know you want to see Brady Shea figure things out or continue to get some reps, and you want to see the veterans, continue to play in the system, I guess. This is about 68, 40, 77, 24 in particular. I want to see Spencer Stastny out there as much as possible. I don't know who else you put into that group. I don't think you need Michael Bunting doesn't need reps. None of these old guys that are new. They're all new to here, but they're old, relatively speaking. You know what I mean? Kemmel, bring Kemmel up for a few games. He's only played twice. I don't know. I'm assuming there's some contract considerations in there, right? The number of games you don't want to the ELC and everything. That's all that matters to me. Keep them healthy and keep them on the ice and keep them playing. What else do you have to lose?
That's why. Well, along with Kemmel, I throw bring Weisblatt back up. He looked good in his last stint there. But anyway, I agree with you 100%. I was furious about the decision to. So Evangelista, had he had his best game against Anaheim? No, but the decision to immediately reduce his ice time in the Anaheim game, bench him against LA, and then bring him back, but bring him back on the third line when he was playing on the first line, that is infuriating to me. At this point in the season, to your point, there's literally, you're not playing for any other reason. There is nothing, I understand if you are, in a playoff spot or close to a playoff spot where, every game matters. And, if the young kid has a bad game, you bench him, that's fine. But in this situation, that's where you say, hey, you know what? Being an NHL player means going through hard shit, and we have to work through it. And we can't just sit on the bench every time we have a boo-boo. And I don't understand, Brunette's leash with the young players is so short, and maybe a little less short with Svechkov, but I think that's purely because he's a center and they need centers.
Yeah.
But I think it's so frustrating because that is the only positive you have at this point in the season is getting those young guys, and not just let them go play hockey, see what they can do. It includes letting them make their mistakes, letting them work through them, coaching them through those mistakes, and not just punishing them every time, because it feels like I don't know, it just feels like.
Well, I wouldn't say, Jesse says, I wouldn't say it's completely short because Barron is still playing. I'm not sure I'd put Barron in the developing young player for the future of the franchise category.
He's also a right shot defenseman, which they don't have. So
yeah. And what's interesting about kind of continuing through this conversation, like Adam Wilsby has been banged up. Nick Blankenberg has played so much that I think we kind of know what he is. I'm concerned that he is what he is, which is at times a really productive player, in particular on offense. He does a really great job of sneaking backside, pinching down when he's supposed to. And I think he's got some really, obviously he's a former offensive player. And he's a good skater. He knows where he's supposed to be. The metrics love him from a fancy stat standpoint. He just has limitations. I don't think he's going to ever develop more than the limitations that he has physically. And that doesn't mean he can't play. It doesn't mean he's not a part of the future. Is he supposed to be the guy Brady Shea played 600 minutes with? No, he's not. It's not supposed to be that way. But could he be a third pairing defenseman for this team when needed? Or absolutely. I just think he kind of is what he is. I don't think what I'm saying is I don't think he's the Svechkov, LaRue, Stastny category of player. I just don't think he is. And again, I say that with all due respect. So then I can say whatever I want after that. So I don't know. There's a few guys that I just don't put into that category. And so I don't know where to put, Willsby. I think it is LaRue, Svech, and that's why I don't mind. I know to your point, Evangelista was on the top line, and that looked interesting and good, and that could be a really fun thing to look at for the future. I really do kind of like the LaRue, Svechkov, Evangelista line, though, because they all kind of know each other. They're coming up through the system together. They have different skill sets, and really, I think they pair really well. Svechkov can score. LaRue can mess some shit up, and Evangelista's got great distribution hands. I think there's a really good combination of those three. Do I love it on the third line after, like you said, kind of getting scratched? Like, no, but I do like those three. And I'm watching Svechkov, and every now and then I'm going like, just this guy needs as many minutes as possible, because they're not going to get to the point where they're producing effective members of a future franchise trying to win without these mistakes. Who cares if you lose games? That's what half you fans want them to do anyway. Like,
Well,
go on, let's go.
Yeah, I don't have an issue with the combination of players. Like I said, it's more of just you reduce his ice time and then you bench him entirely and then you bring him back and put him on the third line. That's, again, all of those things limit ice time. And that's what we're talking about here, is getting those guys more ice time. I understand, like, in a vacuum, if you have a roster that has Jonathan Marchessault and Philip Forsberg and Steven Stamkos on it, you don't, reduce their ice time in favor of these young kids. But in a team in this situation, why the hell not? Because again, it doesn't matter if you win or lose games, because you're still going to finish with a really bad record and probably a pretty high draft pick. So
it's unfortunate that Molendyk and Gibson aren't quite ready yet, because this would have been a perfect situation for them to also be in this group, because they're just not there. They're not. One of them's, I guess, not able to play, but the other one is not ready yet, I guess. And so, not that the defense. Barry Trotz even said it last Tuesday. He's like, our defense kind of fell apart. So, the defense would have been fascinating, because I think Spencer Stastny's in this group too. I think he has. Like, next year, you're going to get Lozon back healthy in the final year of his contract. You got Yossi back healthy. You got Shea hopefully better in whatever system they're going to be playing. Stastny could be a part of that top four. He's good enough to be so give him some reps, give him some consistent reps.
Well,
leave him out there,
especially for him, because he's, obviously a little behind the curve because of where he started the season. And honestly, though, the pairing, again, is this who you want? I mean, or I shouldn't say who you want, but who you entered the season thinking would be your second defensive pairing? No. But the Delgaizo-Stastny pairing, to me, has been one of the most fun to watch. It's like, give those guys more time. We know what Blankenberg can do. And Shea, again, like, I know what he can do because I watched him in Carolina for years. I don't know what's happening with this system here. But again, that's why I think that,
we spent a lot of time Adam and I spent a lot of time, the underlying metrics. And I think, I don't remember if it was Kevin who posted it in the chat or not on LBH, but there's a lot of positives to Brady Shea's game in the expected goals and the underlying metrics and all the fancy stats. So my theory on Shea is that it's been an awkward season. The eye test, he hasn't passed the eye test. It hasn't worked for whatever reason. This is going to lead me right into a comment here in a second, but that he's not as bad as people think, that it's not nearly been as bad as people think. And that the internet, this is my weekly reminder not to live your life on Twitter. That the whole like punchline, 6 more years of this. I just don't think that's as hard hitting as people think it is. Like, I just think he's better than that, and will be better than that. Which leads me right into an interesting comment here. Anthony says the offseason plan is to fire Brunette, hire Taylor with how young the roster is. We need to stop hiring coaches that cater to the vets. Draft Michael Misa. I think that's how you say that. Offer sheet Noah Dobson. Three comments here. One, I think the problem with this roster is that they put that Andrew Brunette doesn't cater to the vets. He does from a strategy standpoint on how he deploys them. He gives the veterans longer leashes, but he got more out of the young players last year than he has the veterans this year, for whatever reason. We've been asking that question. It's unanswerable, whatever. The offer sheet thing. I do think there is, and call this just intuition. I'm not sourcing this or anything. I think there is a move coming at the end of the season, not around Brunette, but on the roster. I don't know if that's to get a defenseman. I don't know if that's to get a center. I don't know. But I think that Barry's going to be active before the draft with his picks. And I don't know what that means, but I feel like there's something coming. And maybe it's a bad move. I don't know. We shall see. And I don't think Taylor, like, to me, the right move for Taylor would have been as an audition during this season. Like it, and the way I explain this is Carl Taylor's been an option for this team like 3 times now. If you're counting this one as a 3rd time potentially to be an option for this team. They may just not think he's even close or worthy of being an NHL coach. If they do think he's close or worthy and are unsure, this would have been the time to audition him. I don't know if they think that or not. My thought is they clearly do not. They've had opportunities to give him chances, and he's not really been in the mix, from what I understand.
I do not think that this would be a good situation for Carl Taylor to be in. I don't think that, like, yes, he's really good at developing players and getting more out of the younger players. He has not had experience coaching guys like Steven Stamkos. And, if you want to make this his audition, I don't think that's really fair to him because I don't know, it's just not a good roster mix. Barry Trotz has constructed a unique mix on this roster. Now, part of that is because of injuries and things like that have kind of forced guys into roles that they were not originally supposed to play. So it's not all on Trotz, but you've got this kind of these brand new young kids, and then you've got these seasoned veterans, and there's like no in between. And I think that there's a very specific kind of coach who can coach that. There aren't a lot of them. And I think one of them, who is currently employed by another NHL team and could lose his job at the end of the year, would be a great fit for this roster, but it's not Carl Taylor. I just don't think that it would be. Oh, Mike Sullivan in Pittsburgh, I think would be great.
You've been on the Mike Sullivan bandwagon for a while. So
yeah, I think it would be great. Because he's one of the few, like, he can work with and get the most out of, Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Chris Letang, Brian Rust, but then he can also do it with, younger, like with Jake Gensel when he was younger and things like that. So
no, I think it'd be a huge upgrade. And we'll get to the Barry Trotz. There's one issue about the Barry Trotz decision making that could be concerning, and a lot of this analysis is based on we have our own opinions about stuff, but a lot of what I've been trying to figure out with this team and with this organization is sort of like, well, but where are they on this issue? And I think Anthony grasped what I was saying perfectly, which I do appreciate. Which is that it's the only reason I would suggest giving him the audition probably 10 games ago, right, to give more time, is if you really actually believe he could be a coach for you guys. If you actually think he's really close, or he's a candidate, if you were to fire Andrew Brunette, he's a legitimate top 3 candidate. If you believe that he's legitimately a candidate for the job, why not give him the opportunity to audition just to see how he communicates and see how he works? The outcomes of the games aren't necessarily what matters. The goal scoring, the expected, it does. Like, I guess that could matter eventually, but really what matters is how do you handle the job? How do you handle communication with professionals? How do you deal with the press? How do you deal with the media? How do you deal with building a culture in a locker room? What are your ideas about how to operate day to day? Like, those are the big picture things you have to be very good at to be a coach. And like, again, if they might just be keeping Andrew Brunette, so that also could be a factor here. But that's ultimately my point. I'm not saying that I think that's what they should have done, or that he is ready, or that I think it's very clear that they don't think he's an NHL coach, because they've had opportunities to bring him up as a top 2 or 3 candidate multiple times and have not done so. So that's what that tells me. Now, Josh says if all goes well, that could be a really good second line someday, which I agree, which is LaRue and Svechkov and Evangelista. I think that could be a really good second line. In fact, it should be. What are they going to do at the top of the formation? It's another question. Which brings me to right after I tell you guys about Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. Sinkers Beverages, 4-time liquor store of the year. They are located in East Nashville. They are award-winning. They have a big, beautiful showroom, walk-in beer fridge that also wins awards. Their sister store, Bluegrass Beverages in Hendersonville, you can Uber Eats and have both of them deliver booze directly to your house. So don't drink, let them do the driving. Wait a second. Drink, don't drive, let them do the driving. I'll get this right. And they'll help you with anything you got going on, man. They got great bourbon allocation. If you want the really good stuff, they do lots of barrel picks for a lot of the in-crowd members. So if you join the in-crowd and you're a big bourbon person like I am, they will send you an email and say, hey, we're going to go do a bourbon selection. Do you want to go do a barrel pick with us? And then you get to go be the guinea pig and actually get to go taste the bourbon at one of the distilleries, which is pretty cool. So sign up for the in-crowd there. And then, of course, if you have any questions about wine or champagne or beer or even THC stuff, they've got all kinds of really good knowledge in that building. So make sure you go check out Sinker's Beverages. 40 years of serving the East Nashville community. And, of course, the best brisket in the city, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. All right. So, and James asked a question here. Maybe we can do this before we get into Barry Trotz. James says, I just think Brunette's system relies a lot more on physical speed than maybe even he realizes, which is why it's always felt like it looks best with the young players. I think that's simplifying it, but yeah, I mean, I don't think you're far off there, James.
And to a degree, yes. Although I will say that while Luke Evangelista has many wonderful qualities, speed is not one of them. He is like very noticeably slow, like a slow skater. He does a lot of other things really well. He's got really good hands and he's really smart the way he thinks the game, but he is not the fastest skater. So it's not all about that, but I see the idea there.
Slow with flow. Andrew Brunette says, last night the team is emotionally they're not emotionally attached. Is that what he said to you guys last night after the loss?
Yeah. So St. Louis, I mean, obviously this game against St. Louis, two teams in very different situations. St. Louis is currently very much in the mix for a wild card spot in the West. I think they came into the game, they were tied with Vancouver technically, but Vancouver holds the tiebreaker. But they are still very much in the mix. And so, of course, they were playing for a lot more. Their desperation level was going to be higher. Brunette seemed, disappointed, but also surprised that Nashville did not match the desperation level, which I understand. Like, I do get you're a professional. It shouldn't matter. You go out, you play, you're getting paid to go out there and play and win. And if you don't have the desperation level, then I understand that that's not being a good pro. But at the same time, I'm looking at Brunette and I'm like, do you have the desperation level? Like, I just don't see, I mean, I just think it's a little bit of like a pot and kettle situation because, I mean, can you blame them for not having the desperation level? I mean, this season is over and you're not, the guys, ironically, who would give you the desperation level that you're looking for are the young guys who you're not playing and you're not giving ice time to. Those are the guys who would play because they have something to prove. They're fighting for roster spots and for more ice time next season. And so when you're throwing Philip Forsberg and Steven Stamkos out there, like, of course they're not going to match the desperation level. They're just not.
$17.5 million says otherwise. So here, so there's
I agree with that.
I know you, and you took all my answers already. By clearing your throat effectively, I might add. There are two ways to look at this. There's the human side, which is, man, I bust my ass all year. I'm 31 years old, and we haven't accomplished our goals. It's natural for me to not be as desperate or as play as hard, et cetera, et cetera. The other side of that is the cynic in me that says no other human in really any other walk of life is allowed to operate that way. So why would we let them operate that way when they are getting paid $5, $6, $8, $9 million? So I agree with your basic point, which, and of course the coach owns some of this as well. There's no question. I don't think it's hard to say that Andrew Brunette's not emotionally attached to all of this. Like, he's the one whose job is at risk. The other players really are not. He's the one I've seen wear it as much as anybody, like physically in his face when we talk to him. And I have not been down there nearly as much as you, but I have seen his body language and his face change over the course of the season. And I would say he's as emotionally attached as anybody, but that's because it's all you can be as a coach. You can't be physically attached. You have no control over that. And so maybe the question is like, what does he expect to get out of that comment? Most great coaches are talking to their players when they talk to the media, or they're talking to the GM when they talk to the media. They're talking to somebody else, the fans many times, but also the players. Nick Saban famously was always talking to recruits when he was defending one of his players for doing something wrong or whatever. I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. It makes total sense from a human side of things, but it does ring hollow for a fan base that's paying overpriced for tickets, overpriced for concessions, and has been given largely nothing this year as a fan base. People don't want to hear those excuses. They don't want to hear, oh, well, the season's out, we're not playing as hard, or they're not as emotionally attached, or, frustration has all, like, he's been talking about frustration all year. Like, it's, I don't know. It definitely, Josh says Brunette puts the despair in desperation. Yeah, I mean, he's wearing it for sure, and he knows there's a big decision coming, which we're going to get to in a second. You want to go ahead and do that? Okay. So here's my here's my thing. Because Barry Trotz said us some things after the trade deadline that you and I and Adam talked about last week on the show about, did he allude to the fact that he's going to keep Andrew Brunette around? Well, he walked that back in the follow-up interview with Stillman on 102.5 the next week, where he said, well, I apologize. That's not exactly what I meant. And if you guys took it that way, that's on me. I need to do a better job. He did fall on the sword a little bit there, which I appreciate, and as Barry want to do. And he does just talk a lot sometimes. He does just say a lot of things. And sometimes, as someone who also talks a lot, occasionally you just keep going and realize, oh, that didn't come out right.
Yep.
And so I think that's what happened. I don't think I don't know if he's made a decision or not. And that's my problem. Therein lies the issue. If you are committed to Andrew Brunette, we can criticize that decision. But I hope you have settled on the decision. I don't know what other data you need at this stage after 2 full seasons, granted conflicting seasons of data, one really good season, one not so, one terrible. Although really good maybe is not the right word, maybe just overachieving. If Trotz has made the decision to keep Andrew Brunette, fine. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but at least it means you are showing patience, you have a strategy, you're sticking to your guns, you believe in X, Y, or Z, and you're sticking with it, convicted. Be convicted in your decision. If you're going to fire him, fine. We can debate that and discuss it, whether it's right or wrong, but be convicted in your decision because you've been in the league for 30 years and you should know better. My concern, and I don't know if this is true or not at all, my concern, the biggest concern with Barry Trotz is that he still doesn't know. And if he still doesn't know what he's going to do with Andrew Brunette, that is a concern for me. So does that make sense? I'm not saying he should do one thing or the other. But if you are sitting here with 15 games to go in one of the worst seasons in the history of the franchise, after you made a bunch of decisions to give him this roster and it didn't work, and the franchise went way backwards on all of this, and you're not sure, I would be concerned about that.
I agree with the premise. The one thing I will add in there, though, is that, maybe he knows, maybe he has made up his mind that he's done with Brunette. But 2 things. One, he's obviously not going to say that to the media at this stage. 2, I think a lot of it has to do, Barry, as any GM should be, is all about the plan and the future. He doesn't just want to be reactive. So I think that a lot of it has to do with maybe he has made a decision, but that decision relies on someone else who is currently employed by another team. Because you can't, I'm fully on the fire Brunette train, but I also will say you can't just fire him and then figure it out later. I think with this roster and how high the stakes are, how high the expectations are, you need to have a plan. And I go back to when Barry first took over, he still had John Hines under contract. And he even told us after the fact, look, I was not going to fire Hines just for the sake of it. I needed to make sure we got the right person. And at the time, the right person in his mind was Andrew Brunette, but he still was employed by the Devils, who were in the playoffs at the time. So it was impossible. It was just impossible to do that. And so I think that you don't want to fully commit to firing a coach unless you have a plan going forward, because I think that would be, I mean, as bad as it would be to keep Brunette, I think it would be just utterly irresponsible to fire him and say we'll figure it out.
So number one, I generally agree. I say this about athletic directors in college. I say this about front office general managers. I generally agree. Don't just fire someone just to fire somebody. Fire somebody with a plan in place, or at least the concepts of a plan. Have a concept of a plan in place, because you may not get the guy you want. Like, I mean, you may not. My plan is to go get Mike Sullivan. Well, maybe you don't, but that's a good plan, right? And
Have a backup plan if that plan doesn't work.
That's what a general manager's job is to have like 3 plans in place. And generally you back channel. Like, you can talk to agents and say, hey, you know, would this guy be interested in this job? Oh, okay, we'll work out the details, but yes, he'd be very interested. Like, you can gauge interest even if it's sort of like illegal tampering or whatever. People have relationships and cell phones. I know that's shocking. And I totally agree with you about what he can and can't say right now. If you can't come out and say he would get destroyed if he comes out and says today, especially after 3 straight losses with 2 goals and a shutout, Andrew Brunette's going to be our coach next year. I mean, he's going to get destroyed on and whether or not social media matters or not, whatever, but he's going to get destroyed. If he comes out and says, well, we're firing him at the end of the season, that's weird and very similar to how he treated John Hines, which I would disagree was a little unprofessional. It's not terrible. It's not the end of the world, but like, you did leave him hanging there for like 5 weeks, and that's not cool. Unless, of course, John Hines was told very clearly, hey, we're going to move on at the end of the year unless we don't get our guy, which again is unprofessional. So I think you do have to. I do think there's ways to handle this stuff. So I don't expect him to come out and be clear one way or the other. What I'm talking about is much like with their perception of Carl Taylor, it's all about what he thinks. When he sits down in the office in a moment of quiet and solitude and isolation with no one else in the room, no big Poyle, no little Poyle, none of the power structure that's around those guys, just himself. With his expertise and his experience and his NHL wisdom, when he sits down, if he is still conflicted, 60-40 even, on Andrew Brunette's keeping him or firing him, that's my problem. If he's 80-20 on this, I'm okay with this. Do whatever you decide. We'll then analyze it afterward and make some evaluations of the decision-making process, and we'll do our whole talking head thing. But like, my concern is that if he's sitting down in the moment of private and he still doesn't know the answer, he's still debating whether or not to keep Andrew Brunette, that's the concern. I don't think that's the case. My concern is that he's committed to it, committed to the coach. Even though I agree with you and I agree with Adam, Andrew Brunette's not a bad coach. It might just be not the right coach for this situation. So that's where I'm at on that.
If Andrew Brunette gets fired, he won't be out of a job for long. I don't think. He may not get another head coaching job, but he will be employed again in the NHL.
Sharks. That seems like a perfect team for him to go. Like,
yes,
and Utah. Like, these teams would be good for him.
I have said this before. I think maybe not Utah. I don't know about Utah, but okay. I think that going back to, because we've talked about this a lot, so we don't need to rehash it all, but going back to the whole, fork in the road that he was at this past offseason, he could have gone the route of full rebuild. That's where you don't extend Saros, you sign or you bring up Askarov, you do all of that. He could have done that, but he didn't. And I'm not here arguing this was the right or wrong decision. I'm just saying this is the decision that he made. I think had he made the decision to go full rebuild, Andrew Brunette would have been a better fit for this team. But the fact that he didn't, and he went with this other route, which again, I'm not arguing whether that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that that's what happened. He does not have the right coach for the plan that he has put in place.
I think what you can sell to the fans, if you trade UC Saros and you invest in Askarov, and right now Onanen looks like a nice piece to have in the future, you can sell patience to the fans. You can say to people, look, this is going to take a few years. but we think Andrew Brunette is going to develop himself along with the young roster. And then you can say, this is what the Titans are doing with Brian Callahan. He's a first-time head coach. They're going, we are rebuilding. We're deeper in this, and Brian Callahan is going to learn on the job as much as our young players are, and we're all going to develop together. Give us a little bit of patience, which Rand Carthon, the previous general manager, did not do, which was one of the reasons he's not the general manager anymore. And the new regime is like, no. We got to go deeper into the rebuild than we want to admit. They're messaging patience to the fans. And Barry Trotz and Andrew Brunette messaged patience to the fans until they gave UC Saros the contract and $100 million to veterans. I didn't say that was the wrong decision at the time, so I'm not going to put my hand up and be like, oh, I told you so, because I didn't. I don't think you or Adam, I think there were questions that were reasonable, and we've got all offseason to talk about this. But I agree with you. You got to go back to that moment. That's the inflection point, right? Like that's the moment that this all changed. Again, wrapping up this topic, I don't know if it's the right decision to fire him or not. I have my personal opinions. I think you need to make the change at the end of the year. I think that's my personal opinion. I also generally appreciate patience and investment in somebody. I think most of the time in sports, we are too fast to make decisions in general, and that patience and investment many times is paid off. Look at Kyle Shanahan and Dan Campbell getting like terrible records to start their careers, and now they're like two of the best coaches in the NFL. So I'm not suggesting that's what Andrew Brunette would be, but there's lots of evidence of patience and investment being the right strategy. Is that the right strategy here? Not, I don't think so. But at least sell me that you're convicted on this. That's what I'm hoping, is that you believe one way or the other, you're all in on. I'm all in on firing him. I'm all in on committing to him. If you're sitting in your office and you're 50-50 today on March 19th, I would be very concerned about Barry Trotz's sort of conviction in his own opinions. But again, this is all hypothetical situations here. So that's all. That's it. All right. Sinkers Beverages, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. Got anything else you want to add on that?
No.
Thoughts on the new pieces? All these new pieces that are, of course, all not young players. Kiefer Bellows scored his first goal in the NHL in like 2 years. How do you say Vrana's first name? What is he going by these days? Is it Jakob? Is it Jacob? What is he doing?
He told me I could call him Jake, but like Jacob. I think technically it's Jakub, but he's like, I go by Jacob.
Changing it for the Americans. I got it.
Yeah.
Jake Vrana, left winger, 29 years old, scored a goal, of course, in a couple of games. You got Osterley playing defense, 32 years old. These guys are not long-term solutions to pieces, but they are pieces. Michael Bunting, of course, has now played in 3 games. What are your thoughts on some of the newer faces that have arrived either off waivers or via the deadline? Also, around Bunting, he is going to turn into a Nashville Predators fan avatar for this entire saga, and it's not fair to him. I want to make sure we're saying that right away, that there's way too much pressure being put on Michael Bunting by Barry Trotz, and the fans are going to gravitate towards that, and it's going to be unfair. I'm just giving everybody preemptively to relieve some pressure from, a 28-year-old forward who could score like 18 goals next year. Like, let's just not put the Stanley Cup hopes on Michael Bunting, please. Yeah.
He is a fine, solid winger. He's fine.
Yeah.
I don't think he makes the team worse, but I don't think, I don't know. I agree. There's a lot of pressure put on him by the comments as far as like Barry saying, oh yeah, this is a guy that we had our eye on. I'm like, I think you just really wanted to get rid of Tommy Novak, and you wanted to save face a little bit by getting a decent NHL roster piece in return. And Pittsburgh right now doesn't have a lot of decent NHL roster pieces that aren't like franchise cornerstones. So, I mean, that was
or 100 years old.
Or both. And so I think that's just that. And, the bigger pieces that they had would have cost more. But
why is Braden on the show? Well, he doesn't make it worse.
No, I just like, I don't think that, if you lose Tommy Novak and gain Michael Bunting, I think Michael Bunting is, objectively speaking, a better player.
Sure.
The problem is he just does, I mean, not problem, but it's just the fact of it. He's different. He plays a different position, and he brings a different element to the game. So I agree with you. Too much pressure put on him by those comments from Barry Trotz.
Team desperate for center talent trades young center for winger.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Real good. So there's that. I'll be honest. Again, I'm not here advocating that I think that he should be a future piece of this team. I quite frankly could take or leave him, but I'll be honest and say that Vrana had some of the best looks in his first 2 games. He had some of the best looks of anyone out there. Now, maybe that's more of an indictment of the rest of the team than it is a praise of him, and more of just kind of illustrative of how the whole season has gone.
It's a good word there, illustrative.
I think that he is, he had some good offensive looks. Like, he's hungry. He's a Stanley Cup champion, and he used to be, he has kind of fallen from grace a little bit, I think. And so I think that getting him in there, he's got good energy and he's got good speed. Again, like Bunting, do I think he's going to be our key to the Stanley Cup? No, I frankly don't really care if he's here next year or not.
So callous and cynical.
I'm pretty sure he won't be. But
Michael Bunting
is, no,
no,
Vrana.
Vrana, okay.
Oh, yeah, Vrana. That's who I'm talking about now. I just think that he is, he had some of the better looks of anyone on an offense that has scored a total of 2 goals in their last 3 games. So, not sure I loved the decision to bench him. But again, I'm not going to get, he was benched against St. Louis. Again, I am not going to, get overly worked up about that, because again, benching him doesn't hurt you long term as much as benching Evangelista. So
yeah, I agree. Okay, well, as far as like waiver wire, I mean, there's a reason guys are on the waivers, but waiver wire ads, they look solid relative to waiver wire ad. But again, that's more of, to your point, that's more of an indictment of where this team is right now. Again, 34 losses. Oh, let's just wrap this up with a really positive note here. They've won 25 games this year. They've lost 35. They've got 8 ties. 34, I should say. 34. 8 ties. They're 8-21-5 on the road. Of those 25 wins, 6 of them are against San Jose and Chicago. The only 2 teams worse than them in the standings, and the only 2 teams that will have a better chance in the lottery, which makes them 19, 34, and 8 against everyone really in the NHL that's playing with like an actual NHL team. And not to really depress all of you, but Mark Jankowski's setting records and Cody Glass is scoring points. It's not an indictment of anything, and technically the Predators did not move Cody Glass. The Pittsburgh Penguins did.
Yep.
4 shots on 4 goals. 4 goals on 4 shots is impressive. For the
it
record.
is. Very it impressive. Is. Goes to Carolina, turns into Alex Ovechkin again. I don't think that isn't. I don't think that's an indictment of the Predators at all. I think like no one, probably including Jankowski himself, would have expected that. So
Speaking of, where's Ovi at right now? He's down to 7 goals. Good night.
Yeah.
887. Unbelievable. I think he gets to 900. What do you think?
I don't know. Well, now there's like talk he might retire after this year. So
I want him to get. I want him. It would be great to get him to 900 last game of the season and then just be done.
Yeah.
Das vidanya.
Like, I'm out. Yeah.
That's as much Russian as I know.
Yeah.
I'm watching White Lotus, though. I'm learning some Russian. I don't know if you're up to date on White Lotus yet, season 3. Pretty good show. Okay. Yes, he's going to Russia maybe after the season. That's what Kevin says. I look, Sinkers, Beverages, Shotgun, Willie's Barbecue, Emma Lingan all over the internet. Make sure you subscribe to Lower Broad Hockey. Guys, just get the young players some ice time and keep them healthy. That's you've got to. That's your number one priority, your number one goal, and fingers crossed that Barry Trotz is convicted in his decision about the future of the franchise. That's all. Look, that's not much to ask, right, Emma?
No.
Alexander Ovechkin's
It
first year in the
shouldn't
Alexander Ovechkin's first year in the NHL was when I was in college. I am 42 years old.
What year was it?
2005.
I was in 5th grade.
What a lunatic. Russian machine don't break. Unbelievable. All right. That does it for us. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for listening. Tell everybody about the show. Thumbs up, notifications on the YouTube page. I know the show got posted really late this week. I apologize for last week, how it didn't get posted on YouTube. I apologize, but it should be up there now for last week with Emma and Adam and I. So thanks to all you guys for hanging out and listening. Otherwise, rate, review, subscribe. Lower Broad Hockey. Follow Emma all over the internet, but don't tweet ridiculous things at her. Be nice, be respectful, be an adult. I am Braden Gall. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next time.